A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day. Some of us will be planning a lavish dinner at a favourite restaurant. Or there'll be some cards, flowers, all sorts of gestures, sparking romance. You might even be thinking of a single red rose with a romantic message that's become sort of iconic, hasn't it, in recognising romance on Valentine's Day. Maybe you're expecting a dozen red roses. Maybe you're a bit fearful of the price on that. But what is true romance all about? Valentine's Day is often associated with romantic love. And we're having a conversation today trying to discover the essence of true romance. Whether you're single, whether you're dating, or whether you've been married for a long time, we'll be having a deeper conversation over this next hour, all about romance, with our special guests, Brett and Kate Ryan, who lead Focus on the Family in Australia. Marriage and relationships are at the heart of what they do best. Brett and Kate, let me say, a special welcome back to 2020. Firstly to you, Kate.
Thanks for having us, Neil.
And
really,
then,
really
let me say,
yeah.
secondarily to you, Brett.
I know, I'm second. Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. I appreciate the acknowledgement and ladies before gentlemen.
Hey, let me put you on the spot here, Brett. Have you and Kate ever missed or forgotten a Valentine's Day?
Well, it's hard to forget. And some of the Rise and Shine listeners will know about this because we spoke about it early in the week. The fact is that we actually got engaged on Valentine's Day. And so it's a day that we remember the actual engagement more than the Valentines.
Okay, an engagement on Valentine's Day. Kate, was that a romantic dinner? Was it a special outing somewhere? You know, how do you remember that day?
It was actually a beautiful day. We drove to Healesville. He was going to take me to Healesville Sanctuary. And I was really looking forward to that. But we got there and he realised how much it cost. And so we did not go to Healesville Sanctuary. He had a little four-wheel drive at the time. And so we actually just drove into the bush. And he set up a beautiful picnic. And I had actually made a heart-shaped cake because I knew it was Valentine's Day. And so we had this picnic and he gave me a card and I was reading the card and started to cry. And then I looked up and said, "Oh, what a beautiful," and he was on his knee and proposed.
Well,
and it was absolutely beautiful.
So this is actually not just a special day, insofar as something that rolls around each year and, there's a bit of a marketing campaign that says this is how you do romance. For you, for the two of you, well, Valentine's Day is a part of your history and it's a part of the history of your family. Is it a good, some people might be thinking today, will tomorrow be my big day? Will my better half propose to me? Is it a good day? Obviously, I think you're going to say, of course, it's a good day to do something significant like that. What do you think, Brett?
Well, I like to think that it shouldn't just be one day that you make your significant other special, feel special. It should be done as often as possible, and if not, ideally, 365 days. Now, you might be right. It might be commercialized, that it's the chocolate factory got into cooperation with the florists, and then the florists, and then then they also got into the other jewelry or card manufacturers, whatever it may be. But it is a time that we can actually set aside and actually say to the other person, "You're important to me. You're of a high value. I cherish you, and this is my token of what that could look like." But to actually relieve yourself of the pressure, it's not necessarily the gift, and it's not how much you spend. It's actually being intentional and making sure that the other person does feel acknowledged during this very special day.
Kate, do you like receiving flowers?
I love flowers, but it doesn't matter when. I wasn't never a Valentine's Day person. And in fact, Brett didn't know it was Valentine's Day when he proposed.
I know. Just to give the guest.
Yeah.
some perspective here. I was a nurse and I was studying my final nursing exam on the 13th, today of all days, and I just decided in my mind the next day I'm going to propose, not even realizing it was Valentine's Day. So that's how ignorant I was of that day. And then it turned out to be very cliche in some world, but I didn't realize. And it started off with, like being romantic, going to Hillsville Sanctuary, but I'm also a Scrooge. And so I couldn't afford to do that. And I didn't anticipate that. And I didn't put that in the budget except for allowing a certain amount towards the engagement ring.
And look, I'm going to say, in terms of flowers, my most important flower receiving, it was after our second baby. Brett, I got home from the hospital and Brett had put the most beautiful coloured tulips in every room of the house. So it didn't matter where I went, they were there.
So I did lift my game on the romance side of things as well.
Tulips are beautiful, and I know in southern states and especially Tassie, they just grow beautifully.
Yeah.
Less in the northern parts of the nation, but do you know what single red roses? That is the iconic gift. Whole bunches of roses by the dozen. I did a little research here. It's cheaper to go and, so for the Scrooge among us, and maybe I'm in there too. Flowers are a lot cheaper at the supermarket than they are at the florist or at the online florist where they might be delivered. But, of course, the florist is going to do a great arrangement and get them delivered and hopefully on time. But you know what? Red roses, upwards of $180 for a dozen red roses. If you want 24 roses, around $280. If you do a little bit of a search online, you can see those are the sorts of prices that are being asked. It's pretty significant, isn't it? So it's one of those things. Flowers do mean something very special, but they do come with a price tag.
Very much so.
Yeah. And look, to be honest, as a woman, I'm going to speak from that perspective.
Oh, that's good.
It doesn't matter whether they are bought, picked. The whole point is that they thought of you, and they went, I just thought of you today, and I just wanted to bring this for you.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter the cost. And if we do care about the cost, I think our priorities might be a little skewed, because how much somebody spends doesn't necessarily mean they value you a lot. It just means they've got money.
I'm more the single red rose type of guy, but I might be in Brett's corner here saying, well, actually, let me just play up the idea that the single red rose is the most romantic and iconic image rather than shell out for the dozen red roses. Hey, but I'm
more for the picking of the daisy that's on the side of the rose and then giving it to her.
I love seaside daisies.
Daisies don't smell that great, do they?
No, they don't. They're pretty. They smiley face.
But it's the thought that counts, and I think that's an important aspect that what Kate has shared is really when I've bought her flowers, it's not, she doesn't consider how much I spent. It's that I'm actually being intentional.
Yeah.
And so flowers may be, and I think that's probably a good place to start. What is your partner's primary language of love? It may be that flowers are really important to them. So then you feed into that. But it may be they just want to spend time with you. Or they might want you to do things around the house. We just posted something on our social media feed about 3 different things. One was doing an activity together. 2, one was to give something really, a gift, something really, something beautiful, or a dinner out. And the third one was an option, doing the chores around the household. And for each person, that may be received as even more romantic because you are feeding into their primary language of love.
We might talk more about those love languages as our conversation continues. We might even talk more about flowers or chocolates or jewellery, lingerie.
Gift that keeps on giving.
Yes. Perfume too, that can be an expensive exercise, or a day at the day spa, or at Healesville Sanctuary, which seems to be getting a good plug on our program today. But look, when we're talking about those sorts of gifts or doing chores around the house, what we might want to zero in for our conversation today is on what is the essence of true romance. So if all of these other things maybe are just things or just moments that we might enjoy, the essence of true romance, where do we start with this? Kate, if I come to you, where do you think we start on this essence of true romance?
Well, romances can be in the everyday. You know, you want to continue on from, you know, when you're wooing each other, you know, in those starting days. And they say that that lasts for about 3 years or less after you've got married. But you can continue that on. And you learn that by communicating with each other. And I just thought I'd put just a couple of examples so that people can get a quick idea. So for me, Brett will, for our marriage retreats, we hand out diamonds to just demonstrate the worth and the precious nature of our spouse.
Not real diamonds.
No, not real diamonds.
The right size expectations.
No, not real ones. Artificial. Not even lab grown.
Yep.
Just plastic. And so we with that, it demonstrates also how valuable we are in God. And so I will find those. Brett will either hand one to me just as we're walking along the road, or I'll find one hidden under my pillow. And I think to myself, that is romantic. That is telling me how much he values me, how much my worth is, and how much God, you know, just a reminder, you're valuable, you're of worth. And I see it, and you know who you are in God. And then just another small one is we exercise each morning, and I walk out and my exercise mat's lying there and my computer's up on the bench ready to go. So and I go, oh, that's so considerate. So just those little things I find romantic.
Thinking ahead and knowing what it is that's going to spark that romance. And there's lots of intangibles in all of this. Now, when we talk about Valentine's Day and the flowers and the chocolates and the jewellery, the intangibles is where you're getting to. And this is the sort of thing, I guess, which is going to give us that essence of the true romance. Brett, from you, what are some of the other intangible things that we don't often think about, but the things that really do spark true romance?
Well, I think Kate alluded to it just briefly, but the fact is that first, you know, when it's just the start of the relationship, you are on the hunt. And this is from a guy's point of view. You are pursuing, you want to woo her, you want to gain her a trust, you want to gain her affection, and you're on the move, you're hunting her. And then when you get married, for example, you say, well, I've already got her. I don't need to continue to hunt. I don't need to continue to pursue. And so we would actually like for people to actually thinking it's not constant. It's a ongoing. It's not just I've achieved, tick the box, I've done my job. It's ongoing. And then through the seasons, through the ups and the downs, through the various ages and stages of children and leaving the nest and then becoming older and all the hormones that change, there is plenty of opportunities to be continually inquisitive, to be curious, to be asking the right questions and to discover your significant other time and time and time again. And it's never a dull moment. And if you continue to work on that, if you continue to invest and be intentional, then your relationship will not become boring. It won't become routine. It won't become mundane. You won't get stuck in a rut. It's a grand adventure. And by the time that you have together, make the most of that opportunity.
Life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. This is 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision Christian Radio.
It is the Thursday edition of 2020 and our talkback line's open on 1800 316 316. Our special guests, Brett and Kate Ryan from Focus on the Family, we're talking about something that I think will be a real value, especially as you are getting ready for tomorrow's St. Valentine's Day. And there might be a romantic interest you have, whether you're single, whether you're dating, whether you've been married even for a long time. The sorts of things we're talking about today in discovering true romance. So 1-800-316-316, you might have a question, a comment, a scenario. You might have your own romance story to tell too. 1-800-316-316. Hey, Brett and Kate, we mentioned love languages a little earlier. Gary Chapman, the champion of that, wrote books, and they just, it's on the bestseller list continually, like for more than a decade or more.
Yeah.
But there's 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, or physical touch. Out of those, I guess you've got to be able to identify in your prospective partner or maybe your lifelong spouse, which ones are their love languages. Kate, if I come to you, why is this so important to get the right love language?
Well, I don't want to harp on too much that it's the only way to understand your spouse, but it is an important way to speak their language. Often, and this has even happened with us. So let's put it this way. Brett loves to serve. And I love that. I love that he loves to serve, but then he can overserve. And so for me, that doesn't do it for me. So I will say to him, I just want you to sit. I just want you to sit and hang, or go for a walk and hang. As you can tell, mine is quality time. And so it's learning that if somebody is speaking a different language, we can't speak in the language we just like to do. Yep. We have to say, okay, it might be stepping out of our comfort zone, but they hear love in a different way. And if I don't speak it, it's like going to Switzerland and speaking Finnish. And they're going, what? No idea what you're saying. It's exactly what happens in relationships. Brett continues to serve and it starts to, let's say, annoy me. So now we're at a place and you go, well, why should serving annoy you? And because then it tells me that I'm not capable. And so it's saying different things than what I need to hear. But if he says to me, why don't we go for a walk, Kate? I go, oh, time together. Oh, that's wonderful. See, it's a totally different feeling. And so if we learn what that person's is, we can speak into that and really see somebody come alive.
And it's usually a combination of the 5. It's never really just one. I know there's a primary and a secondary, and people can fixate on it. You never gave me my primary language of love. You didn't love me. And the other side of things is they may not be necessarily wired that way. They may have never considered. And so part of the part of being true romantic in this approach, Kate was saying, she was telling me, so my key is listening to what she has to say and then following it through, not just being dismissive. Oh, I don't want to spend time with you. I just want to serve you. I just want to do things what I want to do. But if I'm not hearing her and I'm not listening to what she has and then being proactive, then that can become a friction point. It's not necessarily just doing the serving. It's because I'm not listening to her.
I wonder whether the word kindness to one another might actually encapsulate some of those 5 different dimensions of love languages, because the intentional nature of being kind to one another. Because if you're not being kind to one another, and I love what you were saying, Kate, about, too much serving here, it's like an irritation, and the irritation is not what we want, but recognizing just how far to be kind, how far to serve, and exercising that kindness. So really, there's an intentionality to that, though, and if things have gotten out of control and you're too irritated with one another, it's hard to be having the motivation to be kind to one another. I guess that's part of the relationships thing. Any thoughts here from you, Kate?
Yeah, I guess it really does come down to communication. You need to be able to talk about how you're feeling and what it is you need. Often we can make people guess and say, oh, if you really love me, you'd know. And that does happen. That does happen. You should know. If you love me, you should know. And the thing is, often people don't know. In the busyness of life, things can get lost, and we really need to, show up and be kind by letting them in on what we need, not just expecting them to know. I think that is really important as part of the whole communication key, is don't keep the other person guessing just because you've got an expectation that they should know exactly what you need or want.
And that becomes, as Kate was alluding to, the unfulfilled or unmet expectations,
yes,
especially for tomorrow, and they're not reached. I mean, we've got a family member who her husband forgets her birthday every year, and instead of getting upset about it, Kate suggested to her to make fun of it, sort of like putting a sign a week earlier. Did you know whose birthday is coming up?
Have some fun with it.
Have some fun with it to remind. And so you're setting them up for success, but also you're not getting upset about it. And but I think going back to your original thought about kindness, I mean, it is the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All of these things, if we can put that into our relationships, man, could you imagine what life could be like? And that's what our ideal is to actually have God in us helps us love those around us.
One question that came through from a listener from Yo in Tasmania. Is Valentine's Day Christian? And how does it relate to Christ? And I wonder if you guys have got any insights there around Saint Valentine. It is called Saint Valentine's Day. I've got a few details here, but anything you've got to contribute there, Brett?
Well, it was actually back in the 8th century, and it was a celebration of a feast of Saint Valentine, as we've referred to, and it was on the February the 14th, and but it's often just associated with the romantic love. And back in the springtime, back in UK, that's where it all sort of started. The lovebirds were coming out, but the fact is, it is. I guess it's someone said it actually started before Christianity. Someone would say, and there's a lot of conjecture about whether it started. Is it Christian? Is it not Christian? I think everything can be redeemable under the banner of Christ. So whether it is whatever origin it is, we can actually take hold of it because God is love. And he has enabled us to love others. And whether it's, the origin of it is, but it's not sinister, it's not negative, it's not like Halloween, but it is something that we can actually celebrate.
And I guess, Kate, romantic love is not divorced from biblical Christianity because there's lots of romantic love in there, even a whole book of the Old Testament, the Song of Solomon, devoted to such things. So it's not divorced, is it, from our Christianity? Romantic love is very much a part of who we are.
Oh, absolutely. The Bible's very clear on the fact that there's very beautiful and romantic love between husband and wife. As we pursue, of course, there's not the physical side of it, but once we're married, then there's the beautiful side of intimacy, physical intimacy as well as emotional intimacy as well.
Now, I mentioned we don't want to leave singles on a sideline here if we're talking about romantic love and people who've been married for a long time. A lot of people are single and seeking Mr. Right or Miss Right. Where do we start talking about singles on Valentine's Day? In some sense, Valentine's Day can be pretty important for young single people, can't they, Brett?
Yeah, well,
sorry,
I'm going to take this one. Yeah,
Yep.
Sorry, Brett was pointing at me. We're actually not defined by this one day. And I think a lot of young people, especially Christians, they get to their kind of early mid-20s, and if they're not married or partnered off, they actually feel like they're left on the shelf. And I think we need to be very careful. I mean, the Bible talks about your value is far above rubies. Now, it's talking about a woman and it's talking about exceptional character and virtue. However, it can be applied to anyone. We have extraordinary value. It is not made up because you are dating or married to someone. Our number one relationship is with God, whether we're married or single, or it should be. And so we shouldn't be defined by this day and what it says. And we love to kind of suggest that, girlfriends, get together, celebrate, your worth in God. It's defined by God, not by this day. Celebrate your fantastic friendships and have fun. I mean, a fantastic title somebody gave it was called Galentine. So, a bunch of girls getting together and hanging out. And for guys, head out and do something amazing. Encourage each other in your walk with God. Have some fun. But I think if you have been really craving a relationship, I would suggest you do not go on Facebook, or as I like to call it, Facebook, or Instagram or any of those things, because what that does is you start to feed on what you don't have. And you start to feed that rather than look at what you do have. And when you start to compare your life to somebody else's life, it's the death of contentment. And so we really want to encourage you to step out and, let's face it, on a day like this where it should be, you feel like it should be about you, we encourage you to look and think about who's out there in your world who needs some encouragement.
Yeah.
And get on board and go and encourage them. And I can tell you, when you encourage someone else, you are encouraged. And the joy that increases, I mean, they've done happiest people are in the world with meaningful relationships and volunteers. And so if you get out there and serve, particularly tomorrow, because there are going to be a whole bunch of people who feel like they're less than, and they're not. And so if we can encourage them in that and speak truth, God's truth is that we are valuable whether we have a partner or we're not. We don't.
As I've said before, no one ever goes backwards with encouragement.
No.
And so we all need a bit of encouragement. And for those who may be on their own or they've had unfulfilled or unmet expectations, we should look out for them and make an intentional effort to look and see what they need at this time.
A little bit like an Are You OK day for romance. Yeah. So, because if you know someone who is single and you might know that they're craving a relationship and there's no one there on the horizon right now, just embrace them, take them under your wing. And as I love your encouragement there. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Hey, we've been talking about some of the intangibles around romance, so not just the flowers and the jewellery, not just the boxes of chocolates and the outings that you might do, but things like curiosity and fascination. You might feel like you know your spouse, being married to them for a long time, or you might even feel like you know your boyfriend or girlfriend, but maintaining this level of fascination, how do we actually lock in some practical things about just keeping the fascination alive? Kate, when you feel like you know each other really well and taking each other for granted, keeping the fascination factor, how do you do that?
Well, first of all, you ask questions. I love the fact that when we're going through things, even tough things, I love saying to Brett, how does that make you feel? I know how I feel about it, and I know, how that, can touch me, but how does it make you feel? I'd love to hear that, because often we can just assume that because we feel a certain way, the other person does too. But our temperaments and personalities just play a huge part on how we manage something. And I love it when we can sit and talk about those kinds of things. And so we're curious about that. And it's actually interesting because we do change over time. I know for myself, I have changed a lot over the years. And so for Brett, one of the statements is, marriage is when you are falling in love with the same person over and over and over again. And it's because you need to learn to get to know that person again. I'm a different person now that my children have left the nest. And so Brett has asked a lot of questions. He's sought to say to me, what is it you would like to do now? What is it that, brings joy to you now? What is it that floats your boat, really, that fascinates you? What is it you'd like to be doing? And that is, apart from us doing this together, which we absolutely love. But yeah, that to me is the fact that he's interested in getting to know the new me. And that's beautiful.
Asking questions from one side, that demands a listening ear on the other two, and the tone that you might actually have that conversation, even on a Valentine's Day, which might take your relationship that little bit deeper. The tone's important though too, I imagine, Brett, because the tone's wrong. You might actually trigger an argument here because, that's not what I always appreciated about you, and now you're telling me it's something different. The tone's going to be important, isn't it?
Oh, very, very much so. And I think that's going back to the fruit of the Spirit, being gentle, being kind, and being patient, because we are all different. And Kate said it beautifully, that we are so different and different temperaments. And so I would encourage people who may not be very good with their words audibly, but maybe to write it down. And I've done this in the past, that I've actually written down reasons why I love Kate. Now, it's not as easy as you think. You can go through a few things, but I got to 50 things. It was for one of her celebration of her birthdays, 50 things that I love about her. And some of them were just sort of like her legs were all the way to the letterbox. It was very short rather than all the way to the moon. But she loved that because it had the humor, but it was also just spending some time. And she's got that. It's something that she cherishes. And I'm not talking about how good I am. I'm not trying to put the limelight on myself. It's just saying, for those who may not be necessarily good with their words, maybe it's time to actually put it down in writing, because then you can actually give your some thought behind it. And it may be able to give the essence, rather than sometimes people say, I'm not really comfortable with the yucky love stuff, writing it down. But speaking about the yucky love stuff, one of the things you can do for your kids, one of the greatest gifts you can give to your kids, is to see that mum and dad are in love. And they might say, yucky, but they really do love it. And it makes them feel safe, and it makes them feel secure. And so even though they might be turned off, it's something that they really cherish. But so you can get the kids involved maybe in Valentine's Day as well, and get them in idea of the romance, because the way that you show love and appreciation to your spouse is the way that they're going to go into the other relationship into their future.
Yeah, you're role modeling.
Role modeling for our kids, and they will one day have their own spouse, and they'll need to role model to your grandchildren. Hey, when we talk about some of these intangibles, curiosity and all the things we're talking about, if you are the person who says, I don't get involved in that, I'm not really, from the man, my wife knows that I'm not very romantic. If you don't actually give any attention to the intangibles, the opposite is likely to come, and therefore you would be bored with one another. Boredom is one of those things, I guess, which can be, disintegrating for a relationship. Brett, your thoughts here on becoming bored with your spouse or with your boyfriend, girlfriend?
I think, as Kate was saying before, about the fact is that life goes through different stages, and we talk about being a student of our partner and to study them. And just when you think you're going to graduate, things change. And so then you have to go back to the beginning again. And so it shouldn't be boring. It's this lifelong learning and lifelong curiosity and being inquisitive and enjoying every different stage and different type of emotions that go through the highs and lows, but say, hey, you're of a high value. I care for you. You're important to me. And so I want to learn more about you. And there's things that I've learned about Kate over the last few years that, are quite intriguing and fascinating. And it changes. And so it's what we make the most of it. If we start focusing, and if we can do this, just imagination right now, for anyone listening to this, look around your room and look for something that's blue. Is everyone doing this right now?
Yep.
Look for something that's blue in your room. If you are looking for it, you will find it. So when it comes to relationship, if you're looking for faults, guess what? You will find it. But if you're looking for things that are positive, things that are positive, are encouraging, things that are just fascinating, you will find it. And that's what we need to do, being very intentional to look for the good rather than not so good, looking for the things that you have rather than what you don't have.
So we're planning Valentine's Day, and some of us might have been planning, the chocolates and the flowers and the outing to a nice restaurant, but the underlying things that we're talking about, some of these sorts of intangibles, I imagine that tomorrow could be a very significant day, because what could start tomorrow then takes root and becomes something of your lifelong expression of love. And I imagine that that's not actually in the big things that might happen tomorrow, but in the little things that'll start to take a hold in a relationship, perhaps a new leaf in relationships here, the everyday actions, the everyday words. These, I imagine, and this is what I'm picking up from our conversation today, that these sorts of things are going to be the thing that sparks and sustains our romance. Kate, the everyday actions, the everyday words, not necessarily the big things that might happen on a Valentine's Day?
Absolutely. I love the way you said sustains our marriage, because it's for the long haul. It till death do us part. And so to bring those things into your marriage in the everyday is going to sustain that. When you listen to people who've been married for 50, 60, 70 years, just the beauty in the fact that it was our friendship. It was that we kept talking, that we were listening to each other. We showed affection towards each other. We made each other a priority. All those things are beautiful. Now, if you don't bring any of those things in and you just do something flashy on a day like tomorrow, it becomes an empty sentiment. But if you're doing all these other things and then you also do this other thing, it's just a beautiful, like a full stop or an exclamation mark. I'm just showing you the extra. And the everyday doesn't mean that you don't do the special things, because sometimes to put in the effort to get dressed up, go out or get dressed up and even do a candlelit dinner in your own home. If finances are a big thing, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You can put on some candles, get dressed up, put on your favorite music and dance together. I mean, all these things are just precious things that you can do to make it romantic without it costing anything.
And I mentioned before about maybe if you've got young kids, a lot of people say, well, the romance has certainly died once the kids have come on the scene, but get them involved. They could be the entertainment, or they can be the waiters and waitresses. They can be the chefs. They can decorate the room. There's lots of things they can get involved, and they love that, to be part of and seeing mum and dad in love. And once the kids maybe, or if they're, depending on age they're younger, wait till the kids are in bed, and then you can start the romantic time. You have to put the effort in. And I know you can be tired, and that is part of the rhythms, and being exhausted, that's part of the rhythms of life. There's going to be the highs and the lows. There's going to be difficult times and challenging times. But if we're actually saying, hey, we set it out on if those who are married and say, for better or for worse, for richer and poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, they can either just be words, or is that covenantal declaration, and that we're serious that we're going to do this together. And keeping the romance alive, keeping that spark alive, is actually up to you, the person you look in the mirror. It's not the other person, and maybe they're not ready for it now. They may be just their head space, their work, their commitments, they are overwhelmed. So that doesn't stop you from making the effort. And I encourage people, if you need a little bit of help, we at Focus on the Family have got a variety of different resources. In fact, there's one that's sort of 100 date ideas, and they're not costing you a lot of money, but they can be actually a start. So there's no excuse to get some information to help you along your journey.
And of course, these for some are very hard economic times. So date ideas that don't cost a lot of money, they could be important too. And you can get creative around date ideas and make life a little bit easier without a big price tag. Hey, we won't enlarge on that now though, but the encouragement there to be creative. We really do have to draw things to a close. I mentioned the marriage retreat that's coming up, 2nd to the 4th of May. In fact, Vision is a co-sponsor of this marriage retreat that you're running there with Focus on the Family, 2nd to the 4th of May. The Journey to Us, and an opportunity for listeners to actually be a part of that retreat. In fact, I think there's an early bird Valentine's special for people who want to just check that out at families.org.au. Brett, just quickly, the Journey to Us, the marriage retreat, what is that going to look like?
Well, it's an opportunity for people to stop, slow down, set aside their busyness and to look towards each other and to look towards God. Where is God in our relationship? Where is He placed in our in the midst of everything that's happening? We want to help people have a safe and secure marriage. We want to help people navigate conflict in a healthy way. We want to be able to care for oneself because a better you is going to help you to become a better us. And then actually to have the relationship that you can work together, that a relationship that you both love. And so we're going to give some helpful advice, but it is a time, and I remember one couple particularly said that at the retreat, it was the amount of conversations that they had just between themselves was more than they had in the last 6 months. For one weekend can be life transformational. And we encourage people not just to wait till it's in crisis, but to continue to invest in your relationship. And this is one way of doing that. And we have had people from all over Australia fly into Melbourne, and I know unfortunately that is part of the equation. But it is a time where people say, hey, I've slowed down, and this has been completely life transforming in our relationship, but also as an individual, because we want to draw closer to God during this journey. And if we can do that, it helps our relationship immeasurably.
Let's face it, the whole thing is about the Holy Spirit convicting us and changing us. That's what we want in our lives, to be more like Christ. And if we allow the Holy Spirit to do the work, then that's going to be the end result.
Well, you can find out about that marriage retreat, The Journey to Us, at families.org.au. Families.org.au. Keep your eye out for those resources too. 100 date ideas and resources on getting kids involved in your day-to-day romance. Wonderful to have you both on to talk about these things with Romance Today. Brett and Kate, just appreciate all the good work you do, expecting a fabulous year ahead for 2025, and prayers for God's wonderful favour and blessing on every step and for lots of doors to open. I know you're available if there might be listeners who want to connect with you and have you be a speaker, whether it's in person or online. Just families.org.au to connect with the Ryans. Brett and Kate, thank you so much for joining us today on 2020.
It's our indeed pleasure.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.